Hello and welcome to the newest episode of our Burgundy Unpicked podcast series. It's a very sunny London. My name is Joe Muller at Corney & Barry, and I'm joined this afternoon with Guy Seddon.
Hello.
And Neville Kirkpatrick. Hello. We are missing our northern colleague. He's gone to see his brethren up north on a tour, Mr. Aaron Eccles, hopefully plucking up the courage to visit Ewood Park to see his mighty Preston North End try to siege them.
It's Deep Dale.
Deep Dale, right, yeah. Oh, he's dodged it. Deep Dale, lovely. So you'll be the three of us, which is very apt because two members here, Guy and Neville, actually visited the domain which we're sort of focusing on today, which is it's Domaine Trapet, Pierre et Fils, and also Domaine Pierre and Louis Trapet. So P&L for short in-house. So I thought I'd maybe just do a brief start with a bit of the history of the estate, and then we can go into waxing lyrical because I think the three of us are very big fans. I know Aaron is as well, but there's a lot of enthusiasts for this domain in Corney & Barry. So the sort of the most relevant, I guess, at the moment is the family that sort of are in control of the domain and run it is Jean-Louis Trapet with his wife André, and they have two sons, Pierre and Louis, and all four of them are involved in the domain in Burgundy. But also they have a domain in Alsace, which is through Jean-Louis' wife, André. She is Alsatian, and it comes through there. But if you go back to Jean-Louis' grandfather, Arthur Trapet, he began the Trapet wine journey in establishing the domain in 1872. And he bought Chapelle Chambertin in 1892, Clos Prieur, one of the Premier Crus, in 1893, Le Trissier Chambertin in 1904 and Chambertin in 1919. So that's where we're at. So Louis and Pierre really are the sort of the fourth generation of the hands-on winemaking viticulturalists. So that's to paint a bit of a picture. I'd also like to take this opportunity just to pay a bit of a tribute to Jean, which is Jean-Louis' father. So Jean Trapet, unfortunately, not unfortunately, had a wonderful life and at the age of 92 passed away earlier this month after being born in, I think it was 1933. So he really sort of took a pioneering direction, so especially with the farming, obviously to bring Jean-Louis up with enthusiasm and dedication, which he then took on to biodynamics. And the family sort of parted, if you like, in 1990 with where the Domaine Rosnell Trapet was set up at the same time. So that was the sort of the last vintage where you'll see. So that's sort of a brief overview. But enough from me. I think I'll ping over a bit of a question to Guy and Neville now, because one of the reasons we are incredibly excited about working with Trapet, the wines have been pretty spectacular for a while. And as we've already mentioned, biodynamic farming has been crucially important. But Louis and Pierre have kind of almost taken it to the new level. Would you like to sort of elaborate on the changes they're bringing in and why they're getting so much attention and accolades now?
Yeah, absolutely. So just to set the scene, Neville and myself and a colleague of ours, Ed Newton, visited and tasted with Louis Trapet in October of last year, 2024. And to start with, it's great to see the next generation totally actively involved and at the forefront of everything that is happening at the estate. And I think that was the first thing that really needs to be brought home about this operation, is that it's 100% family owned, and it was 3 generations. It's now 2 generations working in tandem, side by side, very harmoniously, and all with their own sort of various personalities and viewpoints. But I think it's a very harmonious domain, and it feels like a domain which is very well set up for the future. As time goes on, proper family domains of this ilk, I think, are rarer and rarer. So I think it's something that we love at Corney & Barry, and we very much want to get behind. In terms of the changes that the two boys, Louis and Pierre, are bringing, it's really a continuation of what their parents put in motion. They are absolute biodynamicists, sort of through and through, like a stick of rock. You could see it running through their veins. And I think that's passion for biodynamics and for really growing as natural as possible a style of grapes and vines is very much part of what they believe in. They have been instrumental in continuing to convert the estate to what are known in the Rhone as échalats, these high stakes, single stake per vine, and with no trellising. And I think this is a similar approach to what you've seen some people do with arching of vines. People believe that by not trimming the top of a vine, you encourage the roots to dig deeper, to look more profoundly in the soil for nutrients, and you get a sort of holistically balanced vine of a sort that you wouldn't get if you were practicing more traditional viticulture.
Yeah, I think on that point, and Nev, you and I were discussing the other day that it's great in order to make truly great wine. Truly great farming needs to be put in place, and these guys certainly have had that, as you said, sort of setup already instilled throughout the domain from the parents. But just to give a better perspective, these échalats. So if you haven't sort of visited Burgundy, to give you an idea, it's a sort of a post 7 foot high up to maybe, which is then sort of ploughed down into the ground to make it as sturdy as possible for the vine to use as a support system for it to grow, as guys sort of alluded to, for longer shoot developments. And I think they've done now 50,000 of these over 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
And that's just so time consuming on its own. So they've had to, cost wise, they've expanded the team, the viticultural team, to help them. They've overseen it. And from what we know, and this is speaking to other people in Burgundy, generally speaking, when there was a lot of time when established domains with their sort of practices already in play were letting the growing season continue at its normal rate, they were out continuing to sort of keep replacing throughout all this. So you're really not really taking a break. So they've just been full throttle, haven't they, for a while?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think what's going on there is it's a commitment to doing things at the highest possible level. And, this conversion would have been no small consideration to undertake. I mean, Jean-Louis, obviously is sort of took the biodynamic aspects of the estate, right at the forefront. Really, he was at the absolute kind of vanguard of that in the late 90s.
Yeah,
and this would have been something that he would have been looked at. But it's only really in the last sort of 10 years that really something like échalas has sort of come to the fore in sort of Burgundy circles as this next level of sort of transition.
To give one other example of the approach, they work a fair bit with whole bunch fermentation, which a lot of people do in Burgundy these days. But one of the downsides, or the sort of flip side of doing whole bunch, is that you can extract without wanting to some of the sort of harsher, more astringent phenolics from the stem. And what they have actually put in place is a system where they remove by hand the central stem, the pedicel, from each bunch. So, to work with whole bunches, but with the sort of extraction of this central stem. I mean, it's a phenomenal amount of work. And, to put this amount of detail into your winemaking, I think is an example of how fanatical they really are.
Incredible. I mean, that is dedication and unbelievable patience to the cause as well. And we are seeing these results come through in the wines in terms of, I guess, sort of freshness, slightly maybe, rather than that sort of full spiciness, and potentially in certain vintages when you've got that central core, maybe a little bit more of a tannic texture difference, not astringency, but something different. And this allows that fruit profile, the transparency of the terroir, and that freshness to really sort of play center stage, doesn't it?
Yeah, you just don't have the distraction of kind of some of those like kind of greener, more vegetal notes that you can get really with leaving the stem in. I mean, look, there's plenty of people that make exceptional wines by leaving the stem in, but this is again, it's next level stuff.
Yeah.
One other thing to mention, I guess, before we get into the detail of it, is that the family also has Domaine Trapet Alsace. And that is an estate which has come down through André's family, so Jean-Louis' wife. She inherited this estate from that side of the family, and they are really equally split, I think, in terms of their love, in terms of their focus, in terms of what they find interesting about wine, between Gevrey and now the Côte de Beaune, and also Alsace. So I think it's an interesting extra string to the Trapet bow that they have this other frame of reference.
Yeah, indeed. And I think, it was originally sort of Pierre was focused on Alsace, Louis was focused on Burgundy. These are the two brothers, the two children from Jean-Louis and André. But now it's very much a sort of a JV across everyone. And I think it's a much better outcome because you're seeing the quality and everyone's input and experience is shared. And the reason I'm sort of really coming on to that is because in Alsace, over Christmas, I had Sonnenberg 16, and it was just Riesling. And it was sensational because it's got power and vibe and mineral presence and this sort of, if you like, verve at the core of it, which obviously may be a little bit more easily expressed in Riesling, but they're very much, you find that DNA through the various terroirs of Chèvre, Chambertin and Marsanne that they hold as well.
But I think it kind of brings us pretty neatly as well onto sort of the new. There's all these new exciting changes at obviously the Domaine Trapet, but I think one of the really exciting things for us is the addition of Domaine Pierre and Louis Trapet, or P&L Trapet.
Yeah.
And I think that Alsatian kind of DNA that has been taken from, that's been in the family, obviously by Jean-Louis' wife, has been kind of brought into the sort of Burgundy domain here. I mean, they've got some really interesting holdings kind of across the Côte de Beaune. Yeah. But I think one of the things that kind of shows the Alsatian roots is that they've got an Aligoté Macéré, which is a sort of maceration wine, which is a typical style that you'd find in Alsace.
Yeah.
But they're bringing it to probably the most prestigious Aligoté vineyard in the entirety of Burgundy, which is Sous Châtelet, and they make a dry version, and they make this Macéré version. And I mean, there's lots of people making fabulous Aligoté now. I think one of the big changes in Burgundy over the last few years has been that quality of Aligoté has gone through the roof. But there are, amongst sort of very enthusiastic, wine lovers and things out there is some of these sort of Aligoté specialist sort of sites that are now popping up. Obviously, Bouzeron down south is one, but this vineyard, Sous Châtelet, is...
Never heard of it.
Yeah.
Has anyone put that on the map? I'm not sure.
Yeah, exactly. Well, there is. We could say it. I mean, I think one of the very famous holders of Sous Châtelet is obviously La Loubise Loire and Domaine d'Auvergne, who makes the supreme example of Aligoté. But I think the Macéré style and the sort of more textural style that Pierre and Louis are bringing to the party is super exciting.
Cool. Well, okay, that's I think that's good. Let's just, if I can ask you to pop a pin in that just for the time being, because I think what we'll do is we'll move on to the wines now. It seems like the perfect opportunity. Domaine Trapet. So the offer we're focusing on, and which is live now, and you'll be able to find it through our Burgundy Entrepreneur hub, will be for Domaine Trapet in Chèvre Chambertin, and Pierre and Louis Trapet, which, as Neville said, is majority 1.5 hectares across Côte de Beaune. The Domaine Trapet has 3 Grand Crus, 5 Premier Crus, 5 Village wines, and the Bourgogne, and that's split between Chèvre predominantly and a couple of Marsanais. So, the thing before I pass on to the question about the wines and is there any that sort of particularly stood out for you and what you'd like to sort of highlight, is these are generally small holdings. Okay, they've got a lovely, decent chunk of Chambertin, which is, as we sort of mentioned earlier on, which is a great savvy purchase from Arthur Trapet back in 1919, 1.9 hectares. But everything else tends to be, bar the Chèvre Village and the Marsanne Village white and red, sort of 0.6 hectares or less. And the other key thing to note is some of these vines were planted very long time ago. Majority have had some replanting since, but we have got some incredible vine age that we can speak of here as well. So, chaps, you were there. You were at the tasting with Louis, I think, for the 22s in the cellar. I love visiting there. I was envious I didn't get on that week, but you can't have them all.
It was a real treat.
Yeah, was it your first or second visit?
First.
Oh, brilliant. Okay, well then, let's hear from your first impressions.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was a very rainy day in Chèvre. I think Guy and I rocked up, no, we had a very warm welcome from Louis, and I mean, the wines. We kicked off actually with the Pierre and Louis Trapet wines, but I think it makes sense to sort of start with the Domaine wines.
Yeah. Okay.
I think 2022 they run a vintage behind always, so the wines are offered in bottle, but the wines are pretty special across the board that I found. I think the growing season of 2022 allowed all of the changes that that have been made at Trapet to really sort of shine. Particular highlights for me is definitely the straight Gevrey Chambertin.
Yes.
Okay.
From them, it's like it has all the sort of typicity that you'd expect from sort of top tier Gevrey, but I think there's just an extra level of kind of aromatic volume and texture, on the palate that you just see so rarely at that kind of level of appellation. So that was very special for me.
Do you think on that? So obviously, 2022, as Neville rightly pointed out, we're a vintage behind. We do this with Joseph Roti, Domaine de la Romilly Conti. So it's becoming a little bit more fashionable, and more people are doing it. Quick side note: 22 obviously is an exceptionally good vintage. We've spoken about it before through Corney's our own sort of marketing, etc. Brilliant, warm, solar vintage. The rains came at the perfect timing, allowed to have this great style. How much do you think is the quality of the vintage versus the quality, or is it a combination of the sort of farming that we spoke about earlier on?
I think having a vineyard which is really balanced in the way that the Trapet vineyard is a way of evening out the sort of variations in vintages in a way. So I think they'll be very expressive. They will translate the vintage, but I think you don't get possibly the extreme lows that you would get in lesser years. I think the vines suffer less from a lack of nutrients, from a lack of water. The roots are quite simply deeper, and so are sort of more inured to the challenges of the growing season for younger vines. I think these wines are perennially performing at a very high level now. I think 22 is clearly a lovely vintage, as you say, but I would say this is more about grower than it is about vintage.
And without trying to take it back to the vineyard again, you made a good point to me earlier on. Remind me about about the alcohol levels, and then obviously 22 being a solar vintage, the way that with the Eschler.
Yeah, I mean, this is people talk about it's all well and good us being sat here going, the farming's great, we love what they're doing, but how does that actually translate in the wines? Why are the wines better because of these changes? And I think a really, really clear example is that these the Eschler staking that they're doing across 1 hectares of the vineyards, this actually drops the alcohol by 0.5%.
Wow.
And in a solar vintage like we're getting, as obviously 18, 19, 20, 22, 23, these are all examples of kind of solar vintages. Giving when you have the ability to drop alcohol by that degree, it gives you a lot of options in these warmer vintages. What it actually allows you to do is that you can hang on for more kind of it's like technical terms of phenolic ripeness, in the grapes without pushing your alcohols too high, and so you achieve a much higher degree of ripeness, but without that risk of the wines becoming too boozy.
Yeah,
and I think that is that gives you a real leg up, I think, versus the other people who are trying to make wine in the same sort of place.
And when you throw in also, I guess, with the Eschler system, it allows a bit more aeration around the bunches and the light and the leaf canopy development later on in the growing season because of its sort of architectural design, if you like, going straight up. Rather, it allows cross winds to sort of come across, helping to keep that sort of that cooler effect. The increase in leaf increase in leaf quantity, and obviously means more photosynthesis. So it does distribute lots more energy, and I suppose the grape development is slightly different as well. But
apparently it channels the energy of the photosynthesis into the berries much more than the leaves.
Yeah.
So whatever the biology is behind that. But
anyway, sorry, I took us down the side road. We're back on the wine. So Gevrey Village, that's one to note. Yeah,
love that. And then I think I have to mention it because it's just so, it's incredible. Frankly, is the Cuvée 1859.
Yes,
I mean, there's it's a small Cuvée. There's not a lot of it floating around, but these are the oldest vines on
Yeah.
on the estate, really. And how old do they go back?
Well, no, purchased in 1859. I mean, hence the name.
I mean, so they were purchased then, and then are they?
In terms of the plantings and replantings, I don't know what the average vine age is there.
But it's the oldest vines.
But I mean, they go back to the very genesis of the estate. So yeah, it's quite cool. And
that is remarkable for a village wine as well.
Yeah, and that's something that Pierre and Louis, the two brothers, introduced recently. So they decided to isolate this cuvée and to really pay homage to their ancestors, if you like, and it's a nice touch.
Cool,
and it's not a bad wine either.
Did you ever stand out, Guy?
Yeah, I mean, I was just having a look through my notes. I think I'll pick two different things. I mean, I think first of all, mention should go to the Bourgogne Pasture Ground, the A Minima. This is a humble cuvée, and it's just over £100 a 6-pack, but it's an absolutely beautiful wine. It's 50% Gamay, 50% Pinot Noir, planted in 1965. So this is quite aged vine material, and there's no sulfur added until the point of bottling, which is quite unusual, and that's where the name A Minima, they do the bare minimum to it, comes from. And it's got this lovely sort of tea leaf, spicy roses, very pretty character with a lot of personality. So I think as a sort of entry level pick, that is an absolute must have. And then on the grander side of things, I was really wowed by the Clos Prieur, for example, this year. So Gevrey Chambertin Premier Cru Clos Prieur. It's essentially a continuation of Mazy Chambertin. So I mean, it's about as good as it gets holding wise. And this was purchased in 1893. So again, goes back a long way. I thought this was a real example of the sort of meeting of flamboyance on the one hand and real precision on the other hand.
Lovely. Yeah, I think with the Premier Cru, this is another sort of change that Pierre and Louis have instigated. So there was, obviously, we've always had Petit Chapelle, Clos Prieur, and there used to be a Premier Cru Capita, which was a blend of En Ergot, Le Corbeau, and Combotte.
Yeah.
So they decided actually, and they're small quantities, between 0.4 0.6 hectares each parcel, that actually they wanted to have that expression of that terroir. And again, this is their pursuit of the slightly, in inverted commas, modern day thinking of the real sort of leading viticulturalists and winemakers in Burgundy now. They want to be all about typicity, all about terroir, and they want to sort of showcase what they have if they've got the holdings, and they've decided to do that. And I think brilliant. It does mean where we used to have a bit more wine and Capita to sell, this all sort of been splintered out into smaller quantities, but definitely shows again the desire to really be at the forefront of taking the Domaine to the next level, but dedicated to Gevrey and its various stylistic changes. And then what I was going to say is the Premier Cru vineyards, and the majority of them all at the north end of the village, just like, as you said, just under the Grand Cru strips.
Yeah.
And so you've got different aspects there, but, for the real, I guess the ones who want to be a bit geeky about it, the one that I would like to taste, because obviously I wasn't part of this, if I could taste one, it'd probably be Combotte, just because it's surrounded by Grand Cru terroir. You're at the Maurier Saint-Denis end. You've got Charme one side, you've got Clos de la Roche on the other, and I think is it Le Trissier? I can't remember which one's the other on encloses it all. But I mean, you've got this Premier Cru vineyard, surrounded by. It's sort of like you go to you may have been invited to a school party and you turn up and you're all nervous, and it seems to be dozens of incredibly attractive women there, and all of a sudden you're a bit nervous, but you're surrounded by greatness and feel very inferior. But maybe you grow into the occasion like Combotte has, and enjoy it.
Well, I think Louis actually said to us, he was like, it essentially just should be a Grand Cru.
Yeah.
Leave that up to the committee, shall we?
So, question then on the Grand Cru. So, I've always, and you know this guy because we've discussed it plenty of times, I love Le Trissier because it's a cool soil. So, it tends to really fare brilliantly when those sort of warmer vintages. So, let's talk about the three Grand Crus. I mean, Chambertin, I know, will probably be, the apogee of 22s from Trapet, but yeah.
Sure. I mean, so I think Le Trissier for me has this characteristic kind of dark character. There's it's very, very unusual, even in a cool vintage, to see Le Trissier show pure kind of red fruit character. There's always a sort of brambly, blackberry sort of inflection to that wine that I think speaks of this kind of cooler, more sort of mineral dense soil. It's, I think if you want to, Le Trichet is probably the sort of Gevry kind of Grand Cru that, to be honest with you, I sort of understood first, if you know what I mean. I think, tasting these wines, you don't get to taste them too often, and sort of getting your head around sort of what each of them are all about is tricky at times. But Le Trichet is the first one that you taste it a few times and you realise that like it always has this kind of dark, kind of brooding, sort of deeply kind of mineral character. It needs time. I think that's always the case. But I think you're rewarded with just an incredibly unique experience. I mean, that's but Burgundy lovers, that's what you're chasing, isn't it?
I think they sit quite nicely alongside each other. So Le Trichet, as you say, sort of very fine, very dark fruited. The influence from the Combe Grisard, the side valley that comes down from the hills. Whereas Chapelle Chambertin is a really warm side. So it's a sort of yin and yang type personality, which is quite good. And very, very little soil. I mean, if any soil at all, it's almost clay and then limestone beneath it in Chapelle. So I think it gives this very immediate character to the wines.
But how good is Chambertin then?
Well, Chambertin is great. I mean, I scored it the highest of the three this vintage, which I don't always, but I mean, I thought there was clearly a quality differential this year. They've got 3 parcels in Chambertin. They've got 1.9 hectares in Chambertin, which is not bad.
Yeah, not bad.
Bought in 1919. It's great. I mean, it's got a bit of everything. I think it brings together the sort of substance, the power, the prettiness, and it sort of just does it effortlessly. So I think
for you two, what do you think? I mean, lots of people sort of say that Chambertin is the kind of unification of all the kind of great things about some of the other Grand Crus in Gevry. Like, do you think what do you think makes a great Chambertin that you look for, not from Trapet but beyond?
It's a good question. I mean, I think it does bring together different aspects. I think that's part of it. What makes a great Chambertin? I mean, the thing is, you have a weight of expectation when you have these great names. So I think, in a funny reverse psychology way, opening a bottle of Chambertin, you're almost more likely to be disappointed than you are if you open a bottle of something less grand. Because, you sort of expect the earth, and obviously, at the end of the day, it is wine, and some bottles are different from others, and there's variation inevitably. In terms of what makes a great Chambertin, I think it is this combination of sort of terroir character, the ability to live for a very, very long time and evolve very glacially over a long time frame.
Yeah.
And, to therefore hark back to a sort of different moments in history or different moments of a Domaine's evolution and sort of evoke what might have been happening in Burgundy at that sort of distant time when it was first made.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like with Chambertin's experience and ones I've had, where if I could magic up a brilliant bottle of mature Chambertin, it's that sort of poise between you certainly want power because it's a village where you associate structure and breadth certainly, but it's got to be handled in quite a sort of gentlish way where that really only comes out with maturity, and you want it to be sort of animal and savory, but it also has a bit of a soaring perfume to the wines as well. I think the best Chambertins can capture both of those sort of terrestrial elements of the wine, which it generally for me tends to be, but with incredible mineral expression. And again, that might be a combination of tension, or it might be a combination of that sort of more savory sort of ferrous side that can come through with clay and things. But getting that sort of combination of two with very sort of well harnessed, refined power is what I sort of pictured for Chambertin.
Yeah, it's wines that can do both, isn't it? That have that kind of muscular kind of terrestrial feel, as you say, but also sort of somehow feel ethereal simultaneously. It's a special thing. Not many can do it.
I think probably move on to Pierre and Louis' project then. Yeah. You mentioned again earlier on about the Masteray. I don't know if you want to kick it off. So the Aligotes want to sort of check on.
Well, yeah. So I mentioned earlier they're making some wonderful Aligotes from a really top site. And the Masteray is a style that you find in Alsace, but is sort of deployed here in Burgundy in a way that really brings some sort of texture and almost honeyed character to the wines, which allied with the kind of mineral nature of the vineyard sous châtelet is. I really quite enjoyed those.
Do you want to talk a little bit about Macéré? Just explain what it is, or do you want me to?
Yeah, I mean, go for it. I mean, I think it's in Alsace. It's used as a sort of.
It's a sort of. I mean, in Alsace, then this is where the link comes in. Because with Gewürztraminer in Alsace, they do a Macéré style, and it's essentially a skin contact.
Yeah.
Sort of. Making a white wine a little bit as you would a red wine in contact with the skins, and seeing what crazy aromas and flavors come out as a result. And I think it was almost started as a bit of an experiment. They did aligoté à trois façons, so almost in the sense that a French restaurant would give you a piece of meat in three different ways. The preparation of the aligoté, I can't actually remember immediately what the third way was, but so the sous châtelet, which is the first wine in our offer, is very much a sort of standard preparation, if you will, of the aligoté grape, and then the Macéré is the skin contact version. I mean, I think I put in the tasting note that it's one for the adventurous, but in a sense that kind of defines this domaine. I think they aren't afraid of experimenting with various things. They were doing wine globes for a while.
Yeah, whilst delivering on the classics. Yeah. Because I've noticed as well within Pierre and Louis, they're using sort of 500 litre barrels as well, aren't they? Rather than sort of the more traditional 28s.
I think they are going towards large format oak more and more, which I think others in Burgundy are also doing. It's having that micro oxygenation or whatever without having the oak flavour compound. So I mean they want the treatment without the derivative flavours.
They also do more classic styles as well with Pierre and Louis. That the Macéré is the outlier really. So if you were to pick one of the whites for a sort of a more purists or traditionalist, if you like, approach from white Burgundy, which one would it be?
Well, I suppose with that hat on, I would have to say the Meursault, Meursault Les Virets, which 0.15 hectares. So I mean, don't get your hopes up in terms of a big allocation of this. They only produce about 1,000 bottles of this on average. So one 500 litre demi-muise and one normal barrel. It's a lovely traditional translation of Meursault, and it does have a little bit of this matchstick reduction. It's got some white flowers and some white peach character. It's very traditional and probably sits quite nicely alongside those wackier styles that we've been mentioning.
Yeah. It's a unique little spot, that as well. It's the highest village plot in Meursault.
Yeah, I did not know that.
Yeah.
And then the reds, are they sort of in keeping? Finally, before we sort of wind down, are they in keeping with the Domaine's wines and styles in Chevry? I mean,
very much so. I mean, it's nice that you have this Côte de Nuit, Côte de Beaune split. So I mean, the reds, like the whites, are all from the Côte de Beaune. There's an Auxey Village, an Auxey Duresse Premier Cru, and then a Pommard Les Vaumuriens, which, on balance, I actually loved the Auxey Premier Cru. I think that was probably my pick. I mean, I like them all, but that was a lovely wine.
I was going to say, I think you're hard pushed to find a better red Auxey Duresse expression from anywhere than that wine.
Yeah, it's purity. I mean, very much in the same that the different terroir up there in Chevry, but there is a sort of real purity to the wines up there, and you find that again in the Côte de Beaune holdings as well. All of the wines have this sort of really delineated kind of crunchy fruit to them, which I think is lovely. And I think that Auxey Premier Cru, I think, was just like the most delightful expression of that, like very pure style.
I agree.
Really nice.
I think as an example of, the higher you go up into the hills these days with these warmer vintages, the more interesting the sort of definition and crunchiness of the fruit becomes. So I think Auxey is a terroir for the future, definitely.
Nice. Well, we're working on Louis and Pierre to come over and potentially do a dinner with us or a tasting at some point. So we will keep you all updated as and when that sort of materializes, because I think that's the best next step is to get them across to London. They don't visit that often, but and just for our listeners, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, it feels like Louis and Pierre probably ages are sort of like between maybe sort of 27 and 30-ish. Do you think? So maybe higher, 32, 33, I don't know.
Yeah.
But so, this is, they've been engrossed in sort of getting to grips with all their educational side on wine growing, on oenology and viticultural practices. And So yeah, we haven't had them yet in London since they've been more involved. So we look out for that. We will do. And the wines are on sale now. So do get in touch if you'd like to place an order. I'll warn you, there's a lot of allocation involved in Trapet, so it is a bit of a tricky one. But in all honesty, I mean, before everyone else to close on anything else, I would say out of all the wines and people we're working with, this is one that I can't encourage enough for people to take a leap of faith if you haven't tasted the wines. If you have, you already know the quality that's being delivered and the direction is continuing to go north in overall. This is the one producer I'd say you've got to get on board with. I've loved them since I first joined Corny & Barrow, and now with this new era, it's sort of ignited even more enthusiasm and excitement.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything else to say. That was a good summary. Totally agree.
Right, well then that's farewell from us for now, isn't it? We'll be back with another one, and maybe we might have our northern representative alongside us.
We're lost without him.
Oh, I know. Oh, Mr. Eccles. Does he like Trapet? We'll never know. Great. Well, look, thank you very much, and take care.